So we just have 1 minute to go, but I'll just quickly introduce how we'll do this. Press conference will go for approximately 1 hour. About the first 25 to 30 minutes of that will be a presentation and statements. The remaining half hour will be questions. I will speak first about the subject. There are two subjects that we are covering here today. Kristinn will look in detail in relation to one of those subjects, and Bernd Fix from the Walhalla Foundation in Berlin will also cover the German angle of one of those subjects. All of us will be available for questioning, and if you can address your questions not to one of us, but rather just address the question in general, and the person who is most able to answer it will answer. Okay. Time, Kristinn? Time. Okay. WikiLeaks has published the biggest leaks in journalistic history. This has triggered aggressive retaliation from powerful groups. Since the 7th of December 2010, an arbitrary and unlawful financial blockade imposed by the Bank of America, Visa, MasterCard, PayPal, and Western Union has destroyed 95% of our revenue. The blockade came into force within 10 days of the launch of Cablegate, the first part of that blockade on December 3, all the participants blockading by December 7. It came as part of a concerted US-based political attack that included vitriol by senior right-wing politicians in the United States and high-level calls for the assassination of WikiLeaks staff and myself personally. This blockade is outside of any accountable public process. It is without democratic oversight or transparency. The US Treasury itself found that there were no lawful grounds to add WikiLeaks to a financial blockade. But the blockade of WikiLeaks by politicized US finance companies continues regardless of this and other findings. As a result, WikiLeaks has been running on cash reserves for the last 11 months. The blockade has cost the organization tens of millions of dollars in lost donations at a time of unprecedented costs resulting from publishing alliances in over 50 countries with over 90 media and human rights organizations. Our scarce resources now must focus entirely on fighting this unlawful financial blockade. If this financial attack stands unchallenged, a dangerous, oppressive, and undemocratic precedent will have been set, the implications of which go far beyond WikiLeaks and its work. Any organization that falls foul of these powerful financial companies or their political allies can expect similar extrajudicial action. Greenpeace, Amnesty International, and other NGOs that work to expose the wrongdoing of powerful players risk the same fate as WikiLeaks. If publishing the truth about war is enough to warrant such aggressive action by Washington insiders, all newspapers that have published WikiLeaks materials are on the verge of having their readers and advertisers' payments blocked entirely. The UN High Commissioner for Human Rights has openly criticized the financial blockade against WikiLeaks, as has the UN Special Rapporteur on the promotion and protection of the rights of freedom of expression and the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights Special Rapporteur for freedom of expression. This blockade erects a wall between us and our supporters, preventing them from affiliating with and defending the cause of their choice. It violates the competition and trade laws of numerous countries. It arbitrarily singles out an organization that has not committed any illegal act in any country and cuts it off from the people of every country. In Australia, a formal US-triggered investigation into our operations found that WikiLeaks has no case to answer. In the US, our publishing is protected by the First Amendment, as has been repeatedly demonstrated by a wide variety of constitutional law professors in that country. In January 2001, the US Secretary of the Treasury, Timothy C. Geithner, announced publicly a finding of no grounds to blacklist WikiLeaks. There are no judgments or even charges against WikiLeaks or its staff anywhere in the world for any matter. The most powerful players in the banking industry have shown themselves to be a politicized arm of right-wing Washington. This collusion has occurred outside of any judicial or administrative process. The reach of these companies is global and violates the most basic principles of sovereignty. In Europe, Visa and MasterCard together control 97% of the card payment market. Alternatives have been aggressively opposed by Visa and US embassies, according to cables released by WikiLeaks. The European Central Bank announced plans in 2008 to introduce a European card payment system. A similar 2010 proposal in Russia, together with a bill banning individualized Visa transaction records from being exfiltrated to the United States, was met by intervention of the US ambassador and embassy in Moscow. The bill was not passed. Visa calls itself the world's largest currency, but every transaction is controlled by the Visa Corporation and the groups that are able to influence it politically. Visa is a national security problem and a threat to state sovereignty. No state, individual, or organization has economic autonomy or privacy if they rely on Visa. Visa is able to provide significant intelligence not only on individual behavior and economic relationships, but on the entire microeconomy and population movement of most developed nations. The Bank of America is one of the principal promoters of the WikiLeaks financial blockade. It is also the creator of Visa, which until 1976 was called Bank of America. In February this year, it was revealed that the Bank of America had commissioned, through its Washington lawyers, Hunton and Williams, a consortium of 3 US intelligence contractors, including the disgraced firm H.B. Gary, to propose a systematic $2 million a month multi-pronged attack to hack and smear WikiLeaks. H.B. Gary was referred to the bank's Washington lawyers by contacts within the US Department of Justice. The authenticated correspondence of this conspiracy to smear and destroy WikiLeaks, which includes plans to target journalists and lawyers supporting this organization, were released to the public An extract of the proposal to sabotage WikiLeaks can be found on page 16 of Plan 6. The entire details are publicly available on WikiLeaks and a number of other sites such as salon.com. But the proposal includes create concern over the security of WikiLeaks infrastructure, create exposure stories. If the process is believed not to be secure, they are done. Cyber attacks, which are unlawful in the United States, against the infrastructure to get data and documents on the submitters to WikiLeaks, its sources. This would kill the project since the servers are now in Sweden and France. Putting a team together to get access is more straightforward, i.e. hinting at the legal difficulties of hacking media organizations within the United States from the United States. Media campaign to push the radical and reckless nature of WikiLeaks activities. Sustained pressure does nothing for the fanatics but creates concern and doubt among moderates. That is the plan by Washington intelligence companies for the Bank of America. In order to ensure our future survival, WikiLeaks is now forced to temporarily In order to ensure our future survival, WikiLeaks is now forced to temporarily suspend all publishing operations in order to direct all our resources into fighting the blockade and raising funds. We have commenced pre-litigation action against the blockade in Iceland, Denmark, the UK, Brussels, the United States, and Australia. We have lodged an antitrust complaint at the European Commission and expect a decision by mid-November as to whether the European Competition Authority will open a full investigation into the wrongdoing of Visa and MasterCard and other financial companies. In April, Reuters commissioned a report looking at support for WikiLeaks over 24 nations. 18,829 adults were surveyed. The poll has a margin of error of 3.1%. 75% supported our bid to make public secret government or corporate documents. In other words, over 24 nations, including India, the United States, Russia, Europe, and Australia, and Latin America, 75% of the population support our activities. And yet, a handful of US finance companies have been able to successfully block 95% of the worldwide support for WikiLeaks. These few companies cannot be permitted to arbitrarily decide how the whole world votes with its wallet.
I just want to add a few words about the flow of revenues since beginning of last year, as you can see on this chart here. There are a few peaks in the flow of donations to us, which was until November last year, primarily through bank transfer and through PayPal. You can see in April that there's a peak when we started, when we published the collateral murder video on April 5th. Through that month, there was a peak in donations. Again, at the end of July, the Afghan War Diary was released, and you can see that reflected in the numbers in August. And then again in October 23rd, the Iraq Warlock project was released. And then in December, end of November, to be exact, the Cablegate project and the support took off dramatically, and then we had just opened the possibility a few weeks earlier to donate through credit cards. It's interesting to note, though, that it was not just as a result of our publication that we were getting support from the general public, because at the beginning of last year, in January, February, March, throughout most of that time, the website was down, and we were in a fundraising drive at that time. Overall, last year, the average donation each month exceeded 100,000 euros. As of this year, until August, the average donations to WikiLeaks have been between 6,000 and 7,000 euros. So it is fair to say that it is almost a conservative estimate that we have lost directly 95% of our donations as a result of the banking blockade which we were hit by at the end of last year. Now, what could we have received in donations if this had continued upwards? We can only speculate, but if you think that about the last 24 hours before the credit card companies closed the gateways, we received more than 130,000 euros in the last 24 hours before the closing of the credit card gateways. If you multiply that by the 300 days plus that have passed since that date, you have a number that is between 40 and 50 million euros. That gives you an indication of the support that we have been deprived of in this time by this illegal and lawful blockade. Now, Julian mentioned what action we will take to fight this blockade. We cannot go into details on how it will be fought in different jurisdictions. We are looking into, and our lawyers are looking into the ways, and there will be different approaches. The first case will be brought within a few weeks in Denmark on the cases of breaches of merchant law in that country, because the processing company that was contracted by Visa and MasterCard, Teller, was forced to close down their operation of the processing to us, despite the fact, as Julian mentioned, that they found on December 30th last year and reported that they found no illegality in the donation and the transfer to WikiLeaks, nothing in contravening Danish or Icelandic laws, and indeed nothing that was in violation of Visa Europe's policy. But they were forced to close down despite these findings. And this is as the matter is at the moment. We will proceed with legal cases in Iceland, in the United States, in Australia, and here in the UK. The first action has been taken. That is the complaint with, along with our IT partner Datacell that handled our credit card processing, a complaint to the European Commission. This was handed in July, and as a framework, the European Commission takes 4 months to decide whether to open up a formal investigation. That would be a big victory if they do, and I would be very surprised if they don't. The 4 months are up in mid-November, November 12th, and we hope that by that time we will have a decision out of Brussels on the action taken by the DG4, the department, the commission that handles antitrust violations. The commission has the power to impose an injunction. It's very rare. They could force the credit card companies to open up the gateways pending the result of their investigation. According to our lawyers, it is very rare that this step is taken, but I think it would be appropriate in this instance, as the violation is so blatant and so obvious. Now I'll be ready to answer some more questions about the breakdown in the finances and about the legal cases later, but I think it's better if we give the floor to Bernd. Julian.
This is Bernd Fix from the Val Holland Foundation. He is one of the Val Holland Foundation is a German charity that has, how many years now has it been running for? Founded in 2003 to promote access to knowledge on the internet and through other means in memory of the German philosopher Val Holland. Bernd has a personal story also. Although he is merely a voluntary board member of this German charity and lives in Zurich, early this year, his security work contract with the stock exchange in Switzerland was cancelled under the basis that he oversaw a charity which sometimes provided funding to WikiLeaks. An extremely indirect connection, and he has lost that important contract. And that's a story that is repeated for many of our supporters and organizations, this censorship beneath the surface as a result of patronage and political fear of retribution from these powerful finance companies or from elements within the US national security complex.
Thank you. Just to make clear, there was never any allegations. There were never any allegations or investigations that I did something wrong, not other members of the board, nor the foundation itself. So it's all based on non-legal activities. Okay, so just a few words about the foundation. We have been founded, as you heard, in 2003, and since 2009 we are one of the financial backers of WikiLeaks, because the goals of the foundation and the goals of WikiLeaks do directly match. We both support the freedom and the free flow of information. We are opposing censorship, and we promote the free speech and other cyber rights on the internet. So for us as the foundation, it was no question to support the work of WikiLeaks that we find very necessary in the world that we live in. So we set up possibilities for donors worldwide to support WikiLeaks by sending donations to the foundation. So basically most of this money you saw there was tunneled over the foundation. So we had a PayPal account that was cancelled in the beginning of December. So the first 3 days in December, there were approximately 102,000 euros coming in through the PayPal channel. And then PayPal blocked our account. They actually said they will freeze the account with the remaining money for another 180 days. So we will not have access to the money for 180 days, which was unacceptable for us. So we sent out a lawyer to PayPal, and they then released the money within a few hours. But it didn't stop there. we were put on the interdiction list of Western Union, just like WikiLeaks itself. So no money transfer through Western Union can end up on our bank account. And as you see, the average donation has dropped in the year 2011. So we know that if nothing unexpected happens for the last 2 months of this year, we will have about 70,000 euros of donation money coming in for WikiLeaks, compared to the 1.4 million of last year. That's roughly 5%. So there is a 95% loss in revenue. But there's another side story as well. In beginning of December, the German tax authorities, because we as a charitable foundation are subject to supervision by tax and regulation authorities in Germany, that ask if we send out money to WikiLeaks. And after confirming that, we were under an investigation, which is quite normal in the 3-year cycle. But this investigation started in the middle of such a cycle, so it is unusual to have that investigated. And a decision about our charitable status is pending for now more than 10 months. Losing a charitable status will mean that we will lose money additionally to that, because we will have to pay taxes on our work, or on the money that we are processing. So I think everything shows that that even the Valhalla Foundation, which has never been subject to any investigation because of wrongdoings, is actually cut off from its work, and we simply don't think we have done anything wrong. Thank you.
So I think how we'll handle this, we'll field some questions now about this subject, and for some 15 or so minutes, and then we'll move on to the next subject.
Philip Williams from ABC Australia. Why have you decided to suspend publication, given that's your reason for being, and that some would say, well, that's conceding defeat? Is it because you simply can't afford to keep going at the moment, or is there another reason?
If WikiLeaks does not find a way to remove this blockade, given our current levels of expenditure, we will simply not be able to continue by the turn of the new year. So we have decided to redirect the vast majority of our staff resources into knocking down the blockade, because if we don't knock down the blockade, we simply will not be able to continue. We are working on other issues. We have over 100,000 pending publications, so other parts of the organisation are running smoothly, but it is a reality. Although we are an extremely efficient media organisation by world standards, and indeed a very efficient maker of change by world standards, that we can't do it with no revenue at all. Fortunately, we have been in a position to be able to survive on cash reserves for almost a year. There are not many media organisations that are in such a position to be able to survive almost entirely on cash reserves for nearly a year.
Hello. About a year ago, you gave an interview to, I think it was Forbes magazine, saying that you were going to take down a bank or two because you had all this stuff from banks. And what's ever happened to that material? From what I saw, you accused Daniel Domscheit-Berg of destroying 5.4 gigabytes worth of banking-related material, but Daniel Domscheit-Berg said, no, he didn't destroy that. He destroyed some other stuff that came in after that, and you still have that stuff. What is your situation regarding materials belonging to banks? And number two, second question is, Has WikiLeaks put out anything of significance since the Guantanamo files earlier this year? If you haven't, when I'm not aware that you have, why are you saying you're suspending your activities publication now? Didn't you really do that de facto a few months ago?
In Forbes magazine reported that we were working on a pending release of banking material. That was widely attributed to be about the Bank of America, causing a over 2% swing in the bank's shareholdings. In response, the Bank of America commissioned a crisis team to engage in a counterattack. That crisis team appears to have led to the hiring this year or late last year of Hunton and Williams, a very large Washington-based firm, to commission 3 intelligence contractors to attack and smear our organization and supportive journalists and lawyers.
What's the relevance of that? What does that have to do with your assertions that you're going to publish stuff from banking documents? Explain to us what happened to those assertions. What is the relevance of that?
So you'll get your time if you are polite.
Yeah.
As a result, so that shows you the environment and the fear that Bank of America had. The material itself, it is correct that we had material on Bank of America, although we have material on every country and many banks. The material itself was in the custody of a WikiLeaks employee we suspended in August last year. We engaged in an 11-month legal negotiation to try and retrieve custody of that material. At this stage, the mediator pulled out, and while we still have hopes of regaining custody of that material, at this stage, it is not. At this stage, we do not believe, unfortunately, that we will regain that material, which is a great loss.
Thank you. When you mentioned that you may, sorry, Esther Adley from The Guardian. When you mentioned that you may not be able to continue after the new year if this fight doesn't take place now, is this a sort of existential moment for WikiLeaks? Could WikiLeaks be out of business in the new year if that weren't to happen? And if that's the case, why have you waited until now to challenge these boycotts, given that they've been in place for 10 months?
We have been looking into the possibilities and the ways to counterattack this blockade in legal means. It has taken quite a bit of time, and it's also quite expensive. Lawyers are not free, so we have also decided to focus on the first point of our defense or counterattack, if you may call it, through the complaint to the European Commission, which we have a strong hope that will result in a formal investigation and hopefully an injunction order from Brussels next month. So this has simply taken time. We have, of course, been focusing on the ongoing projects. It is throughout this year. I mean, we have been forming an alliance with almost 100 media in more than 50 countries. We are not a big organization, so that has taken all our resources, a lot of our resources at this time. So that is the reason why this is taken. But I have to admit that I never thought. More than 10 months ago, that we would be in the position today that this would still be in place. I could understand that under the political pressure and in the frenzy and the hysteria that was we were seeing at the end of November, beginning of December, that the financial companies would bow to that pressure. But I never believed in my heart that they would keep this in place for all this time. I thought, and I don't know if you agree, Julian, this would be a contemporary thing. When more and more legal points came out showing how absurd this is. I mean, this is unprecedented. You will not find a single example of a banking blockade towards an organization like this. It is totally outrageous. And it should be of a great, it is, in my opinion, the greatest attack that we have had in the last year and a half since we began the high exposure publications beginning April 5th last year. Because it's not an attack on WikiLeaks in itself. It is an attack on freedom of speech. This is not, in my mind, the story on WikiLeaks. It is not a story on Julian. It is a story on how the corrupt financial powers can take it upon themselves to try to destroy an organization fighting for the freedom of the internet, freedom of speech, without any legal justification. There have been no legal action against WikiLeaks. There have been no charges against the organization or anybody in the organization. So this is totally outrageous. If it's not stopped here, where will it lead to next time? We have heard about concerns from Amnesty International. Of course, they survive on donations. We've heard concerns from Greenpeace. And we can name a lot of organizations that are doing even illegal things. If you look at Greenpeace, I mean, that's one of their agenda. They do break the law sometimes. Are we going to allow these financial institutions to have this power? So it is of utmost importance that we focus on that battle, not just for WikiLeaks, but for every individual in the world who is stripped of the possibility of showing support by donations, and for all other organizations that are relying on donations and sometimes do things that are not popular with those who hold power.
Sorry, can I just ask you about the question about whether you feel this is an existential threat to WikiLeaks to drive over?
This financial blockade is an existential threat to WikiLeaks. If the blockade is not torn down by the end of the year, the organization cannot continue in its work.
The information that you referred to that's in the possession of a former employee, is that specifically information about Bank of America?
That question would take too long to answer, but perhaps afterwards I can speak to you one-on-one. Yes.
Sorry. Given the fact that you thought it doesn't take that long in the last 10 months as it did, and given the fact how low you run now on financial resources, how much trust do you have in the system, in, you know, on the people or the organizations who might be able to help you in the future before you really run out of time?
Which part of the system are you referring to?
I mean, the fact that the justice system, mainly, probably.
Well, the first front is that, as I mentioned earlier, the complaint to the European Commission. I will not believe that the European Commission will not take this very seriously. We are talking about 2 American financial enterprises that are controlling 97% of the car processing market in Europe. I do not believe, and it is a blatant violation of the EU treaty. I do not. We must put faith in Brussels and the European Commission and take a direct action against the companies.
We are, while we have great hopes for the European Commission process and for the pending lawsuits in Denmark and other countries, you're right, we're not putting all our eggs into the judicial basket. We have also today opened up some other more creative ways for donors to transmit money to WikiLeaks. And that includes mobile telephone, SMS payments in a number of countries. It also includes additional national bank accounts. Thus far, bank-to-bank transfers are still possible in most countries. Any bank using the Bank of America network or any Bank of America bank holder is not able to transfer payments to any account that the Bank of America suspects, that is its own language, suspects would end up with WikiLeaks. But otherwise, bank-to-bank transfers are still working. And unusually, for a high-tech organization like WikiLeaks, we are now also reliant on checks and cash sent in the mail.
Jerome Taylor, The Independent newspaper. Can I ask whether the fundraising initiative that happens today, the money that comes in, will that also contribute towards, Julian, your personal legal battles, both in fighting the extradition attempt in Sweden and any future legal battles that may be held in Sweden should that extradition be successful?
It's very interesting that you choose to ask this question, because WikiLeaks collected monies have never gone towards the Swedish extradition case to which I am subject, a case for which I have not been charged. But that hasn't stopped our opponents spreading deliberate disinformation in order to reduce the amount of donations coming to this organization through the unblockaded means. Bizarrely, you can still make PayPal payments and Visa payments to the Julian Assange Defense Fund because that goes towards lawyers. But you cannot make Visa payments and PayPal payments to WikiLeaks because that goes towards publication.
Karen Kasane from The Age and the Sydney Morning Herald back home. Can I just ask, I take your point that you can't tell us too much about what sort of litigation you're pursuing, but you sound at the moment like you're just looking at regulatory authorities to wave the big stick on your behalf. Is there a possibility of civil suits against any of these banks or organisations if you think they're breaking the law? Could you claw some of that money back by taking out civil action against them specifically?
That is one possibility that we are looking into, and our lawyers. I would also think that, at least in America, a class action would be a possibility because people there are being stripped of the possibility of expressing their support. But that is one way that we are looking into. I would like to maybe give the microphone to Bernd about, because the PayPal hit directly the Vo Holland Foundation, so he might have information about how they will proceed in that case.
So we at the foundation are currently also looking into legal actions with our lawyers, so we haven't made up a decision how to proceed precisely. That's not made up yet. But I think the situation is not acceptable any longer, so we will look at it very, very closely, and it's very likely we will proceed with legal action there.
So speaking about whose rights have been violated, well, there's the rights of all of us to knowledge, to freedom of information, to believe that we can speak freely. There's the rights of WikiLeaks as an organization to be able to pursue its values and engage economically with the rest of the population. But there is also the rights of our donors. Those rights have been compromised by this blockade. Their rights to economically engage with an organization in Europe that they support, their rights to politically affiliate with an organization through the method of giving it a $25 donation. That right has been breached. And within the United States, there's a long history about the rights that people have to affiliate with an organization. Now, normally those rights are expressed against interference by the federal government of the United States. Here we have a situation where Visa, PayPal, MasterCard, and the Bank of America have grown to be such powerful organizations that they are effectively administering part of the state because they administer basic services. If you go to get a telephone line on, or you go to post a letter, telephone companies and postal companies that have monopolies or near monopolies do not have the right to refuse you service because they are essential services. Banking, similarly, is an essential service in the 21st century. There is no individual who can act in a significant manner, nor an organization, without the banking industry. The banking industry cannot be allowed to run free. This is not like the competition between two greengrocers. This is like the situation of basic telephone service, basic water service, basic electricity service. There must be rights afforded to organizations to be free from the political interference by those essential service companies.
Guy Rundle from Crikey. Two related questions. Are you disappointed that PayPal joined the general blockade, given that it was founded by self-styled libertarians and purported to have an alternative approach to global financing and payment? And secondly, is what you're really saying that this is really a crucial question about sovereignty and a question of an attack basically on European sovereignty by American institutions?
PayPal was founded as an alternative to the banks, founded by Californian libertarians, founded by Peter Thiel, effectively a Californian cypherpunk and libertarian. Those people left PayPal in the late 1990s, and it has now evolved into a situation where it is every bit as bad as the major banks like Bank of America. For PayPal, WikiLeaks is not the only organization that has been blockaded. Just a few weeks ago, Diaspora, an alternative to Facebook that it supports WikiLeaks, was also for a period of time cut off. In relation to your question about European sovereignty, yes, it is a reality that Visa and MasterCard, as instruments of a political grouping in Washington, not of US law, but of a political grouping in Washington, are able to control in a practical manner the economic exchange between one European and another. That is a basic issue for sovereignty. Does a nation have control over the economic interactions that occur within that nation, or does another nation have control? And in this case, it's not even another nation, the United States, who has control over basic European economic interactions. It's a completely unaccountable, extrajudicial grouping of corrupt US-based finance companies together with their right-wing pals in Washington. So we are trying to create, it is a fact that Visa, MasterCard, and PayPal control nearly all of the small movement market. Visa and MasterCard together control 97% in Europe. if you add on PayPal, I'm not sure what the result is, but it's near 100%. But there are some alternatives. Yes, they are a little bit harder to use, but we encourage people who want to support WikiLeaks to go to wikileaks.org/donate, and you will see some of these other alternatives that are new, such as SMS payments or UCash or Cash-U that exists in the Middle East, or bank-to-bank transfers, provided you do not use the Bank of America network. Of course, cash payments can be made, although they are sometimes difficult to arrange. We also have something worthwhile to note. While Western Union has put both WikiLeaks and the Val Holland Foundation and Bradley Manning on its interdiction list, MoneyGram, the competitor to Western Union, has not. So we can see the complete arbitrariness of this blockade by comparing, for example, these two financial institutions. But you can go into any MoneyGram office and wire money to Iceland and then on to WikiLeaks.
It doesn't sound like those methods are going to work to get you through the funding crunch you face.
Yeah, the basic problem is interesting. WikiLeaks has been able to be so forcefully politically independent because our traditional donor base is over 50,000 people. It may well be over 100,000, but we just checked the records yesterday, and over 50,000 people. So that means we are not able to be influenced by any one person or any one group. That is how we have achieved our political independence. But as part of appealing to the broad population of the world to support us, we have to make those details publicly available about how the world can transfer their support to us to keep us strong, to keep us publishing. As a result, putting up, you can submit to us donations by Visa or PayPal here and here and here, those are then immediately targeted and have been taken down as a result of this blockade. So, yes, we will have to go to more wealthy individuals to ask them to transfer monies to us through the electronic transfer system of the banking industry. The problem with bank-to-bank transfers or secure cash transfers is that there's an overhead, and that overhead is something like $50. The average WikiLeaks donation to date has been $25. So we are an organization that has broad mass appeal. We are not an organization that relies on a few wealthy individuals or foundations, and that is how we have been able to publish so robustly and so freely to date. But yes, we hope to put together a constellation of wealthy individuals from different nations, so we're able to keep our political independence, also together with a broad mass appeal using these alternative mechanisms.
Sorry. Hi, I'm Raphael with the Associated Press. Donors may have some question about how much money you need to make it through the new year, maybe long term. How close are we?
We have put up on wikileaks.org/donate what our projections are for the next 12 months. And that's approximately $3.5 million US. Now, of course, that means the organization is not able to expand in the same way that it rightfully should be able to. This graph here, so why we can say that WikiLeaks has lost tens of millions of dollars. It has possibly lost more than that because as a young organization growing very quickly, we were denied our rightful opportunity to grow in the way that the public demanded that we grew. but $3.5 million is our projection for the next 12 months on what we need to operate at the same capacity that we have operated over the past 12 months. Now we'll move to the next topic now. The attacks on WikiLeaks over the last year and a half have not just included the financial blockade. They have not just included high-level calls for our assassination or political attacks from right-wing politicians in the United States. There have also been attacks on the very structure of the organization. And last year, that resulted in us having to suspend one of our staff members. The fallout from that was that we viewed that our submission system could not be trusted anymore. As a result, we have had to completely re-engineer from scratch a new generation submission system. Now, WikiLeaks has never had only one submission system. We receive information in a wide variety of means, just like intelligence agencies and professional mainstream media organizations receive their information through a wide variety of means. And it has been important to us to always have a wide variety of means, so no one mean becomes the sole subject of infiltration or investigation. However, for the last 12 months, you haven't been able to go through the front door to submit WikiLeaks sensitive information. You've had to establish contacts with the organization and transmit us material through other mechanisms. On November 28, the 1-year anniversary of Cablegate, we will launch our new generation submission system. That includes not just a public interface, but also several other mechanisms that are necessary to deal with an attack on the entire internet security system that has been established over the last few years by intelligence agencies and criminal groups. Right now, it is not possible to trust any HTTPS connection on the internet. It is not possible to trust your banking system. It is not possible to trust any regular web-based secure encryption system. That is because intelligence agencies have infiltrated a number of certificate authorities. Certificate authorities are those authorities which sign the cryptographic keys that are used for secure internet communications. On November 28, we will release our alternative to that system, which is independent of all certificate authorities. And right now, we can also state of the Wall Street Journal, who has attempted to create a WikiLeaks style submission system, that it simply cannot be trusted. Al Jazeera and its transparency unit created also an electronic submission system, which also could not be trusted, and I understand that they have taken it down for re-engineering. This is a much broader issue than simply the difficulty that WikiLeaks has in protecting its high-level intelligence sources. This is a problem that affects all online, web-based, secure transfers of information.
understand you may be limited in what you can say, but how do you think you've managed to get around the fact that, in your eyes, certificate authorities can't be trusted with this particular submission system?
We will give full details on a conference here on November 28. I would like to say that this problem has been brewing over a number of years, and we were aware of it before, back in 2010, and we had a number of mechanisms to ameliorate that. Thousands of robots that went out over the internet to simulate being sources, to check to see whether these men in the middle or fabricated certificates existed. So we had a number of different mechanisms to try and ameliorate that problem. But it is our view that the problem has now gone so severe that even those attempts to ameliorate it no longer can be trusted to the degree that our sources expect us to be able to solve the problem.
My name is Kristinn. I'm a Norwegian freelancer. Could you say anything about which exact intelligence agencies this is about?
Well, for instance, DigiNotar, a certificate authority in the Netherlands, appears to have been penetrated by Iranian intelligence. Its certificates, fabricated for Facebook, MI6, and a number of other groups, were found to be intercepting all traffic going in and out of Iran, fabricating the secure keys of Facebook, Gmail, MI6, the Mossad, and so on. However, it is not just a matter of certificate authorities being penetrated by intelligence organizations or electronic mafia. A number of certificate authorities are in effective state control. They are run directly by branches of the state. Additionally, certificate authorities exist as corporations, including Microsoft, and they exist within the coercive framework, the legally coercive framework and the politically coercive framework of states. And in dealing with the sorts of material that we deal with, political coercion, as we have seen with this banking blockade, is a real risk to WikiLeaks and to its sources if political coercion can result in the compromise of security. Last question.
Finnish newspaper Helsingin Sanomat. How big is the WikiLeaks staff right now? How many people do you have working for you?
WikiLeaks staff fluctuates depending on the project. So we have something like 20 staff, but when we engage in a major release, we tend to hire a lot more staff. We also have something like 800 volunteers that do useful work, and our general supporter base, according at least to those people who've signed up to Facebook, is around 2 million.